California joins Oregon and Washington, becoming the third state to allow women to obtain birth control from a pharmacist. Here's the rundown on this, Margaret. Any woman, regardless of her age, can now obtain birth control without a doctor's prescription from any pharmacist within the state of California. All she has to do is fill out a questionnaire. She will be administered a blood pressure, a brief exam that will take her blood pressure by a pharmacist, and then she will be able to obtain self-administered hormonal birth control, which includes birth control pills, patches, injections, as well as vaginal rings.
Just not the IUD, not the insertion.
So those things, IUDs and implant devices, you will still need to go to a doctor to obtain that.
I mean, look, 3 whole states. Wow. I mean, way to go. 3 whole states in the U.S. that have removed the hurdle for women to have access to birth control. Look, birth control, especially if you don't have insurance, it is a massive moneymaker. Just to see an OBGYN, typically, in my experience, it starts at $185 if you don't have insurance. And I can only imagine doctors not being too happy with this.
Yes.
If I had to guess, I mean, that would be, they're losing some clientele by removing that hurdle.
Oh, absolutely. And to that exact point, in fact, there was a survey compiled by CIRMA, which is an online medical network. They surveyed 2,500 physicians, and one of the things that they found was that 73% thought that pharmacists should not be able to prescribe birth control. Some other opposition on this: the California Medical Association opposed, state law, but switched to more of a neutral position after a provision was added requiring doctors to first screen the patients before they would go to the pharmacist. But then you've got supporters of this.
Wouldn't that be a doctor's visit? Doesn't that sort of defeat the whole point of that? Look, did the doctors did they have like a little comment box where they had to say why?
I think the doctors, to your previous point, I think, yes, it's about money because that does obstruct the amount of money that is being brought into them by way of insurance claims. And I also think that this is also about a safety issue for women. You know, yes, they're getting a questionnaire from the pharmacist. Yes, they're going to get a blood pressure test. But what prohibits, them from lying on the questionnaire? Or, the pharmacist doesn't have this young woman's full medical history.
You hear the health and safety argument with estrogen-based birth control more so. There was one that came out a couple of years ago. It was called Yaz, and it was prone to create blood clots in women, particularly in the legs and in the lungs. And the safety issue, we've come such a long way since birth control originated, and it's a very safe and effective product. Largely, the moral argument is something that you hear more often than not, that if you give a young girl birth control, she's going to use it, Melvin, which is a problem.
And they're hoping that this will help to curb the unwanted pregnancies that come up. Now, supporters of the new law have noted that pharmacists have much more knowledge, if not more, about drug side effects, more so than physicians. However, that's only part of it. Part of it is knowing how the drugs go together. The other piece of it is the medical history and the medical, well-being of this young woman and of the individual.
Also, the parental consent form requirement. You would see that more in schools. That argument in the 2000s. You don't hear as much about that anymore. But that parental consent issue, if you're prescribing birth control to a woman who is under the age of 17, for example, parents, they claim that they want that stake, that right to be able to know what their child is up to.
That's the case actually in Oregon. If you're under the age of 17, the pharmacist and the doctor must work together to be able to.
But if you have a case of incest, doesn't that sort of circumvent? You would wonder where that parental right line is drawn. In some of these cases.
Absolutely. I think that the question, though, underlying question here is the new law safe? Is this new law safe? I think a pharmacist doesn't have any of the medical chart. What stops, as I said, a girl from lying? Will the new law help to cut down on unwanted pregnancies? We'll just have to wait and see.